So, you're new to art and want to draw masterpieces like this, or this. You probably tried to draw maybe by copying some other artist's work or tried to make your own character from imagination. I don't know if you can relate to it, but that is just me. When I started to learn art, I drew whatever I like. I always felt like I wasn't improving. And if I had a guide of some sort, just like this one, it would not have taken me almost 5 years to learn the fundamentals. So without further ado, here is a guide as to what to practice to improve your art. So first of all, anatomy. So assuming you're entirely new to art, you probably don't know what anatomy is. Anatomy is basically a medical term, which is the study of the structure of the human or animal body. If you want to draw people and animals, you will definitely want to understand anatomy. You cannot just draw 2 lines for an arm and a circle for the hand and call it a day. So here are some of my tips on how to learn anatomy. So first of all, I would recommend you to only focus on human anatomy. After you've gotten a good grip on human anatomy, then you can focus on animals. Except if you want to only draw animals, and that is why you're learning art, then you can go and learn animal anatomy. But if you want to overall improve in art, then I would recommend you to focus on human anatomy first. Number 2. Good place to learn anatomy is YouTube. Just search up anatomy tutorials on YouTube and follow along. Try it out 2 or 3 times, and after that pick a good clear standing pose and break down the anatomy of that model. Not literally, okay? On a paper. After you've gotten the anatomy, basic anatomy down, you can get into dynamic poses. But dynamic poses are poses that depict a motion rather than just a still standing figure, like for example, a dancing pose or jumping pose. A good trick to get better at dynamic poses is to find the line of action. So I would recommend watching a few tutorials on that as well after you've gotten the hang of basic anatomy. Okay, number 4. This is a tip from my experience. So there'll come a time when you think you're starting to get better in art, and slowly keep on practicing, and after some time you realize that something is off about your art, your anatomy, your drawing. And good thing to do in that moment is to watch the tutorials again and practice along with them once again, because most probably you've forgotten the concepts in the video and you should refresh them. So do that. Okay, anatomy is done. So number 2, breaking things down into shapes. Everything around you is made up of shapes. You just have to pay attention to it and practice. Your hand, for example, is made up of this trapezium shape. Even your body is made up of shapes, and you'll have to pay attention to that while drawing poses. So tips. Tip number 1. I'm actually gonna start with the head here, as probably a lot of you will want to draw the head. So I really recommend you learning the Loomis method, which just teaches how to break the head down into shapes. It's a really good place to start. Number 2. Draw poses by breaking them down into shapes. Watch a few tutorials on this topic to get you started, and you'll be good to go. Okay, the next thing to focus on is foreshortening. Foreshortening is a technique used to create the illusion of an object receding strongly into the background. It involves shortening the length of an object to make it appear compressed when viewed from a specific angle. So a lot of hard words, let me just break it down. Basically, when you see an arm, for example, like this, it's gonna be long. You see it in its actual size. But when my arm's like this, you can't see the full arm. You're just viewing certain parts of it, and certain parts of it are blocked by, for example, my hand, and certain parts of my arm as well. This is a foreshortened arm. So here are some of my tips on practicing foreshortening. Number 1. Basic shapes. Start by foreshortening simple shapes like cylinders or boxes. This will help you understand how to compress forms. Number 2. Human figures. practice foreshortenings on human figures. So take a photo references of people in dynamic poses to see how different parts of the body appear shorter when viewed from certain angles. And this is also one of the reasons why you need to have a good grasp at anatomy. Because when you have a good grasp at anatomy, you'll know why a certain part of body is foreshortened. For example, if you're drawing the arm and it's foreshortened, you'll know why it's foreshortened. You'll know, okay, that muscle is hiding behind the front muscle, and you'll know how to draw it and how to compress it. So anatomy is really important to draw foreshortened poses. Okay, last but not the least, light and shadow. Understanding light and shadow is crucial for adding depth and realism to your drawings. So you'll really have to practice and understand how light falls on an object and then how shadows are formed. Here are some of my tips on how to practice light and shadow. Number 1, value skills. So what is a value? Value is basically how dark and how light an object is. So my first tip would be actually to just make a grayscale. Pick the most darkest color from your color palette, and then the lightest, and then the next lightest, and the next lightest until you get to white. Just do that. Tip number 2, shading basic shapes. So practice shading simple shapes like spheres, cubes, and cylinders to see how light and shadow affects them. Here's the biggest tip. Don't use more than 5 colors. In fact, at first you should just use 2 colors to just see here's light and here's shadow. If you start using a lot of colors, you'll have to see, okay, how dark is that? How light is that? But our focus should only be, okay, where are the shadows and where are the light? I'm not telling you to use a complete black color and a complete white color. No, it should be a little dark gray for the shadows and a little light gray for the light. After you've gotten a little hang of just 2 colors and seeing, okay, here's the light, here's the shadows, I would then recommend you to go to 3 colors, 4 colors, and then 5 colors, but not more than 5 colors. 5 is the maximum point. Okay, tip number 3, break things down into shapes. I've said that before and I'm saying it again. Everything is made out of shapes and you just have to learn to see how. So the same is the case with lights and shadows. When you're going to be practicing, I want you to just break it down into shapes. And when I say shapes, I want those shapes to consist of C, S, and I's. That is, C curves, S curves, and straight lines, I's. And if you have trouble breaking the shadows and lights into shapes, I would recommend you to take your model or your reference image and trace over it to see where the shadows and lights form. Our goal here is not to create a masterpiece. We're here to learn how lights are formed and how shadows are formed. So break the shadows and lights into shapes. Okay, so that's the basic stuff. And while learning all this, you're definitely gonna learn more things along the way, so you don't need to worry. But in my opinion, all this is great to get you started. Before the video ends, I do have some more tips and advice for you. So first of all, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite artists from YouTube. First is Broco. Broco is a YouTube channel that covers almost all the art concepts and it has dozens of tutorials on each topic and concept. So it's a great place to start learning anatomy, foreshortening, and breaking things down into shapes and even light and shadow. Everything will be there. Another YouTube channel is Draw Like a Sir. If I remember correctly, that was the channel where I started learning anatomy. And secondly, I would advise you to practice every day. 10 minutes of practice every day is better than just 1 hour of practice 1 day a week. But do remember to enjoy it as well. It's okay to miss in a few days, but remember to get back on track, or else you're gonna be spending 5 years learning the fundamentals just like me. Number 2, don't beat yourself up for making a shitty piece of art that's not up to your expectations. Look, you're just starting out. It's gonna take some time and it might not be easy at first, but with some practice, you'll slowly get the hang of it. So just trust the process, okay? Also, trick is not to expect a masterpiece from yourself. I learned this tip from Sam Does Art, and he just said that when you're starting a piece, don't expect anything from yourself. Just go into the piece thinking, I wonder what I will create today. Probably some shitty piece of art, and just go in and let the creative juices flow. So don't expect anything. Also, when you're just starting out, you're just learning the fundamentals. So of course, when you're learning something, it's not gonna be great. When you started to learn how to write, your writing wasn't very fabulous, if you remember, okay? So don't expect anything. Another tip is to use references. Whatever you're drawing, draw it using a reference. I think so a lot of artists here to back this up. Look, if you're just starting out, you don't have a lot of memory of how a pose is supposed to be or how an object is supposed to be. So you definitely need a reference at this point. But one thing I will advise you not to do is to trace. Tracing is bad. Unless you're just doing it to break things down into shapes and you're learning anatomy and all that stuff, then it's alright to trace. But if you're just tracing somebody's art to copy it off and pass it as your own, then yep, that's wrong. Don't do that. And lastly, when you've gotten all these basics, then I would recommend you to get into perspective. Now, there are 3 kinds of perspectives. I think so about just cover in the outro. So maybe I might make a video about it in the future. And another thing is color theory, because you're not gonna be only painting in black and white. You're definitely gonna be painting in different colors. So color theory is something you should look into after you've gotten all the basics. And at the end, good luck on your art journey.